Welcome to the DGD Podcast. As always, Robert Reynolds, Kobe, and Juan have some things to do, so we will be rolling solo today. Wanted to give an announcement real fast. So I posted a poll on Twitter, and it seems to be for the podcast listeners, overwhelmingly wanted to have the podcast show drop that night. So moving forward, you will be able to get the podcast the same day. Wanted to make sure that was aware for those listening in that find us on podcast wherever you find it. DGD Pat in the building says, "Well, hello there." Absolutely, sir. How are you? Obviously, excuse me. As we look forward to the 2023 season, obviously Georgia's schedule has been widely criticized, right? Widely criticized for being absolutely just full of cupcakes, things like that. So what better way than to have our own show dedicated towards the difficulty scale? So what we're going to do is we're going to take each game one by one as it goes through the season. And I'm going to rate it on a schedule on a difficulty 1 to 10, right? And for those that see it, obviously cupcake being like 1s and 2s, right? And the green, if you're for those watching, trap games in the middle, and then upset alert if we feel as if it's in the red. So keep that in mind as we move forward with all of these games for each each week in the season, right? So as we continue. Before we get started, though, I do want to say shout out to our friends over at Apotheos. Had it again, folks, that coffee every morning. It's one of those things. It's just a ritual for me. Excellent coffee. Had the Costa Rica this morning, and it's so good. Absolutely amazing. Best coffee I've ever had. Personal testimony. There ain't no script for me to read off of. Listen, located in Kennesaw, Georgia. You can go online, go to dgdpodcast.com, and you can actually shop their website. It's pretty simple. We've made some website adjustments. If you want to check it out, let's go to dgdpodcast.com, or you can go to dgdpodcast.com/Apotheos to learn more about our sponsor, Apotheos. If you're not familiar, they are the official coffee and cold brew partner of the Classic City Collective. That is Georgia's NIL collective. So any bag that if you go through our website, dgdpodcast.com, and you shop Apotheos, go to that and it'll take you to the website. Any bag of coffee that you buy, they will dedicate 20% of each bag. The proceeds from those bags will go to the collective. So keep that in mind when you support Apotheos. You're supporting the dogs as well. Thank you, Apotheos, for sponsoring the show. Now, with that being said, let's get started. All right, get started here. First thing is first. We will do that again from 1 to 10 or from green to red, as you'll see on the show. If you're watching live, you will see the green to red, green being cupcake. In the middle is a trap game. And then, red, you're looking at upset alert, right? So first things first, we'll get started. First week 1, Georgia hosts Tennessee Martin. Now, obviously, that is a school that not a lot of people are going to be understanding of, and that's fine. That is fine. But with that, I have them at a 1. I think it's a cupcake. And the reason why I say that is this. Tennessee Martin, against Tennessee last year, they had a guy go 7 for 122 on Tennessee's defense. He is gone now. They had a lot of senior leadership leave last season. And obviously, I think Georgia defensively will just absolutely destroy this schedule. DGD Pat has them at -2. Listen, the lowest I can go is at 1, Pat. So I understand your empathy or your sentiment there, but I cannot do that. I will say, listen, it's going to be a 1 for me. I just think so there. And obviously, if you're in the comments, let me know what you think. And we'll go from there. However, listen, there's nothing I can do. Even Carson Beckett's first start, if he is the presumed starter, I just don't see them just struggling. I think Georgia can just have their way, right? Just my thought there. Listen, it's a night game too. So the environment, even if it is Tennessee UT Martin, I just think that the place is going to be absolutely bonkers, right? As Pat, as he says, it is the first night game in Sanford Stadium in a couple of years. So yeah, I mean, I think they're just going to be overmatched physically, talent wise. It's no discredit to UT Martin. It's just what it's going to be, in my opinion. Listen, expect Georgia to just absolutely run away with this, probably 5-6 touchdown win, if not more. Just way too early, but yeah. Obviously, you know how we do when the season starts. We'll do our predictions and everything, but I expect a absolutely humongous point spread here, and I would expect Georgia to cover it. Even with the new offensive coordinator and quarterback, I don't see that being a problem. Moving on to week 2. Now, y'all are familiar, Georgia fans, you're familiar with this. This was supposed to be a road trip to Norman. However, with Oklahoma and Texas coming into the SEC and the second part of our home and home falling into when they would be conference members, the SEC decided to scrap the matchup against Oklahoma. But before that, Pat does say 63-3. So maybe that is the case. We might have our first 63-3 moment first week of the season. Absolutely ridiculous, but it's possible. But to get back to week 2, right, going to week 2, you're looking at what could have been Oklahoma, but now you find yourself playing Ball State at home again. And again, this is another matchup that I just see Georgia having their way with and just absolutely dominating. I've got this at 1 as well. If this was Oklahoma, you might look at a 4, maybe, right? We know what they looked like last season, but I'm going to give Brent Venables the benefit of a doubt there. Obviously, looking at Ball State, though, there's just no reason for me to believe that they have any chance. I don't see anything happening as well with that game. So there is that. No other way to put it than it's just going to be an obliteration, right? Pat might have another 63-3 moment right there, and I wouldn't be opposed to it. That's week 2, right? You're going to get a lot of these guys getting reps, right? You're getting some immediate depth from your young guys, your reserves, your freshmen. They're going to be getting run, and a lot of it, I would expect, and which is boding well, which we'll talk about at the end. But then you host South Carolina in week 3. Now, the question there lies, South Carolina, should we be worried about that? Right? Should we be worried about it? You Spencer Rattler coming back, Beamer ball. There's a lot of hype. Listen, they did beat Clemson. They beat Tennessee to end their regular season. Lost a thriller to Notre Dame in their bowl season, but I don't put that against them. I think they're on the up and up for real. You have to be mindful of that. But when it comes down to playing in Athens, with the fact that Kirby just for some reason, I feel like Kirby just despises Beamer. I don't know if it's just this weird thing, but I mean, look at what happened last year. Utterly embarrassed the Gamecocks in Columbia, right? Like 49-7. Going for it on 4th and short. Like all these things making me just wonder, like, what did Shane Beamer do, right? But, people, you're talking, this could be a trap game. I see the people's sentiment there. I just don't think as long as Shane Beamer is there, you see this being anything where Georgia, looks past South Carolina. You just don't. You absolutely don't. And with that being said, for week 3, the matchup, I have them at a 4. There are some questions. How does Georgia replicate some production, or South Carolina, excuse me? How does South Carolina get production off of some defenders that they lost with Cam Smith, Zach Pickens, Jordan Birch to the transfer portal? And also on the offensive side of the ball, I know they have Spencer Rattler. I know they've got Juice Wells, which is going to be an excellent player in the SEC. But you lose Jaheim Bell, which is arguably one of their better offensive players. Marshawn Lloyd, the running back transfers, and the running back depth is a very big question mark. In this game, I have them at a 4, just solely because you never know. I think it could be lower. I just don't see it going any higher than a 4. For the sake of this, I have it as a 4, just because we really don't know what it's going to look like with them having a new offensive coordinator, Daryl Loggins, coming in to be the coordinator, replacing Marcus Satterfield. So, I think that opens up Shane Beamer's offense. Ultimately, I think Georgia wins comfortably. However, I do think this will be more of a game that Georgia has their eyes open. You don't let this become a trap game, right? So I'm not going to call it a trap game. Excuse me. I'm not going to call this a trap game, but I do think you do have to be careful offensively because you don't know what the offense is going to look like. It's going to be an early test, first SEC matchup for Carson Beck, assuming he's a starter. Right? There are these factors that Georgia has to look at. I think Georgia handles business comfortably, but there's always that possibility that something might go wrong. I think Kirby's got the answer for that. Mike Bobo's got the answer. If Carson Beck starts to struggle, I do think you see us rely on the run game. I think that could be the situation, but it would definitely cause some concerns if something like that were to happen, right? So I have South Carolina as a 4 in this moment, right? So now you look at, all right, you've got 3 home games there, and then you host UAB in week 4, right? You moving on to week 4, hosting UAB. Listen, we've played UAB recently. That was Stetson Bennett's first start on his rip and tear through 2 national championships. Absolutely destroyed UAB. Obviously, something that Georgia fans love to see, right? I've got UAB as a 2 on this. UAB as a 2. And the reason why I say that is I think they're a step up in better competition than Ball State and UT Martin. But I just don't see them being any kind of threat offensive or against the defense. I really don't. That's just my thought right there. Right? So when you look at it right there, I've got them at a 2. I just do. Which is still what it is, but there's no other way around it getting to say, hey, like it's still a cupcake game for us. What do you say? But then this is the fun part. Week 5, you have Georgia's first road test, and that's in the confines of Jordan-Hare Stadium in Auburn. So Georgia travels to Auburn. First road game of the season would be whichever quarterback's first true road environment in the SEC as well. So this does raise some suspicions and concerns as well, right? Just with South Carolina just being different circumstances. I also think that you have to be mindful. We don't necessarily know what Hugh Freeze-led Auburn's going to look like, right? The expectation could be that they're going to look kind of rough, but you never know, right? We'll find out. Luckily, it'll be in week 5, so you have some time to see what they could look like, some tendencies, things like that. So there will be some time and some game film on Auburn, kind of get a feel for what they're going to look like. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, though, I have Auburn as a 3. I think there's some talent there, but I think the quarterback concern for Auburn is what's going to hold me back from putting them on the same level as South Carolina at a 4. Even with the road game environment. I know Robbie Ashford's there, but is he going to be the guy? They bring in, I forgot the guys. I know last name is Thorne. Bring in a guy named Thorne to come in and maybe be the guy. I don't know. But that Hugh Freeze can play with some quarterbacks there. So you have to be mindful of these things, right? That matters. So I've got them at a 3 as we move on to the next matchup, where Georgia comes back to the confines of Athens and Sanford Stadium, and they host Kentucky. And Kentucky for Georgia has been a game where it's an extremely physical matchup, right? You look at Georgia last season going to Kentucky, extremely cold, 16-6. This kind of looks sluggish, kind of walked through that game. And it kind of raises alarms a little bit. I do think that you have to look at what Kentucky lost, though. They lose Will Levis. They lose Chris Rodriguez. They lose some offensive line pieces. So they're having to replace all this. They bring in Devin Leary, but the question with Devin Leary is, will he be able to play? You're looking at week 6, and you think that there's a chance that you see Devin Leary, even to start the season. I'm not sure. But by week 6, I think there is a chance that you see Devin start at quarterback. But what are they going to do? How are they going to replace it? I think you got I think Darian Brown, I think is his name, as a player to watch there. But I just think that it's Georgia. Georgia will physically overmatch them, being the fact that it's also in the confines of Sanford Stadium. It's just over for me. So I've got them on the 3 on the difficulty scale there. Same with Auburn, right? I'm still not sold on Kentucky yet. Like I said, as we move forward in the season, I do think you have more tape and kind of more of an understanding here. But as it stands today, I just don't necessarily know that Kentucky's got the bodies to handle anything. I expect them to be physical, but I just think the depth and the talent gap is just too much for Kentucky to even come close. Adding the fact that they're on the road in Athens, it could get ugly, and I think it will get ugly fast, right? Get ugly very fast. So you have 6 games, and then you're looking at 6-0, right? There's no reason why Georgia should not be 6-0. You've had some small difficulties there. I think your South Carolina game is being at a 4, probably your most difficult game based off of today's projections. I think South Carolina will be your biggest game to get to that point. It's just one of these things you have to keep in mind for, right? So after Kentucky, now this is where it gets interesting. You go to Nashville and you play Vanderbilt. Now, Vanderbilt almost makes a bowl game last season, and that's a huge improvement with what Clark Lee is doing there in Nashville. However, Georgia shut them out last season as well. So it'll be interesting to see if Vanderbilt scores some points, right? Don't necessarily know for sure. However, I don't see Georgia struggling too much with this at all, in my opinion. So with that being said, I had them as a 2 as well. You bring them as a 2 just solely because what happened last season, right? Even being on the road, I don't necessarily feel extremely worried at all about Vanderbilt. I just still feel like they're so far behind in regards to talent. I'm not saying that they're doing a bad job in trying to recruit guys and things like that. I just ultimately just get so worried about seeing Georgia versus Vanderbilt, right? From a Vanderbilt, it could get ugly for them. And I think it will, even on the road. Georgia has been known to, take over their stadium. We've done that several times. I don't see that slowing down any. So I expect another just obliteration of an SEC opponent. So now you're looking at 7 games in, 6 games in, and you head into the bye week, right? Before we move on with the second half of our schedule, I do want to take another shout out. First off, make sure to like the video, folks. Make sure to drop a like if you're liking this. Subscribe, ring the bell, right? Ring the bell. It's so fitting for Georgia there. But I want to give a shout out to Alumni Hall as well. DGDpodcast.com. You can shop Alumni Hall there as well. Same thing as Apotheos earlier. Keep in mind, licensed Nike, right? You see what I'm wearing. Licensed Nike, Cutter and Buck, well-known brands, all licensed Georgia Bulldog gear. Find them in store at 1791 Oconee Connector, number 535 in Athens, Georgia, or you can shop online, right? Mention the DGD podcast in store if you're in Athens, get 10% off your order, or you can support the show by using our website and shopping Alumni Hall from there. Also, if you want to check out and learn more about Alumni Hall, head over to dgdpodcast.com/Alumni Hall. And from there, you will be able to learn more. You will see new, like just in, all these things. And you'll just learn more about the business as well. So thank you to Alumni Hall as well for sponsoring the show. Now, with that being said, we move on from the bye week. Georgia has, at this point, 6 wins. Fairly easy, I would say. And we look forward to the cocktail party, right? We always have our bye week before heading to the cocktail party down in Jacksonville. And it's just always going to be fun, right? Because let's be honest. We saw what happened since Billy Napier has taken over Florida. It has been one of those things where if you are a Georgia fan, you absolutely love this. Absolutely love it. Florida is going to be terrible this year. there's no other way to put it. If the spring game is any correlation to how the season could be, I definitely think that Georgia should absolutely just steamroll them, right? It is a rivalry game, however, so anything can happen. But I do not trust Graham Mertz. I think the defense, however, could be upgraded. I think the defense will be better. I just think that offensively, not having the quarterback that they need, while also looking at having to rely on their running backs. Now they have good running backs with ETN and that core there. I think they'll have to rely on the run game. But what does that mean? That means that it bows right into Georgia's bread and butter, right? Stopping the run. So if you stop the run, you stop their pass, or you force them to pass. And I do not feel confident at all with Graham Mertz or whoever their quarterback may be. Right? Just don't see it being very good for them. It's going to get ugly, folks. I have Florida at a 2. I just don't. They're just not that. Defensively, they'll be okay. I just think that at the same time, the offense, the quarterback situation is not good. It is a terrible quarterback room to be in right now. It's just not good overall. I don't trust their offensive line. I think Georgia can manhandle that offensive line and make Mertz have a very long day. And just give me one of these games where Carson Beck going back home and just absolutely torching the Gators in Jacksonville. It would be just one of the most fitting things possible. All right, so now you're looking at being excuse me. So now you're 8-0, right, heading into the next week here. Sorry, I just called myself. We were actually 7-0 before the bye week. But now you're 8-0, right? And now you look at playing Missouri, all right? Pump the brakes. Pump the brakes. Last season, Missouri had Georgia on the ropes, cold night in Como. And honestly, if it's not for Malachi Starks, Georgia could be looking at one loss in the regular season, and the entirety of the season could be altered, this and that and this and that. New season, Missouri comes into town, and it comes into Athens, and I definitely just believe that Kirby Smart will have these guys up for this game. They will have them up for this game, which bodes terribly bad if you are a Missouri Tiger. Kirby, I think he took that personally, that loss, or the potential could have been lost, I guess. Last-minute win, let me rephrase. Definitely think that matters to Kirby. Kirby will not let them sleep through that. It will not be surprising to see Kirby use that fuel for motivation throughout the season, potentially, at least heading into this week. So ultimately, when it comes down to it, in regards to difficulty, another 2. They have Luther Burden. I just don't worry about the talent with Missouri. And again, you're at home this year. And you also just look at the fact that Kirby will not allow this team to play down in this game. I think Kirby sends a message in this game, right? There was a lot of people nationally that thought that, Georgia's got exposed, and to some degree they did. So Kirby, it leads me to believe Kirby will absolutely set a precedent and a message by just absolutely destroying Missouri in Sanford Stadium. I know it's weird. Why am I saying this? It's just because it's a statement, right? You look at last year's. This was the vulnerable spot. I think Kirby sets an example here. I have Missouri at a 2. To recap so far, from 1 to 10, you're looking at Ball State and UT Martin as your 1s, Missouri, Florida, Vanderbilt, UAB at your 2, Kentucky and Auburn at your 3, and South Carolina as your 4. So now you're looking at 9-0. You're looking at 9-0, moving into Ole Miss. Now, this is where it gets interesting. It gets very, very, very interesting. I feel as if Ole Miss is the game to be mindful of. This is your senior day. You have Tennessee upcoming the following week. We don't know what Tennessee is going to be like at this point. If there is that chance that Tennessee could be undefeated or have maybe at most one loss, This game is going to be massive, right, the week ahead. So you definitely have that opportunity to look ahead. Also, Lane Kiffin is not a bad coach. He can design winners to beat your defense. They have Quinshon Judkins, one of the best running backs, arguably in college football, coming back. He's only a sophomore. But again, I think Georgia predicates themselves on stopping the run. So I think it will be hard for Ole Miss to establish a dominant run game in this game. If they do, then I think it could be a very long day for this. I genuinely believe you can have some issues here if you don't stop Quinshon. I think you're going to have to, if you're Ole Miss, I think you have to open the ball, spread the ball out. So who's your quarterback at this point? Is it Jackson Dart? We don't know. There's several quarterbacks that could be in the running for their starting gig. We'll see what happens, right? For this game, though, I have it as a 5. I have it as a potential trap game. Considering the circumstances, you are in Athens, but you do have Tennessee the next week. There's going to be Tennessee fans are going to be chirping all week leading up to this. The week before the Georgia-Tennessee game, we know this is coming, but you do have to keep in mind it is senior day, so you will be in Athens, and that is a good thing if you're Georgia, right? Last time Ole Miss played us, we got absolutely just outmatched. It was wild to think this back in 2017, but this is also the one team in the SEC that Kirby Smart has not beat yet as a head coach. So I think there's a message to be made here and make that kind of statement by, winning beating every SEC team, shall I say, by beating Ole Miss. But I do think Georgia has to keep in mind that this could be a trap game. So you have to be mindful with this. I think you're going to get this. This will be a game where your defense gets tested. In my opinion, the secondary, I do believe that our defense and secondary will be strong, but you will find out that, what they have. I think if you pass more, that's going to bode well for Georgia, but I do expect Ole Miss to score some points. I don't see them scoring a ton of points, but I do see them scoring. I just think that, that would be putting a huge discredit to Lane Kiffin's offensive prowess in his mind for them not to do that. Excuse me. So I have Ole Miss as a 5 here, heading into the game against Tennessee in Neyland Stadium. Now, with that being said, this is where it gets fun. Excuse me. This is where it gets fun because you have arguably could be the biggest game of the season for Georgia in Knoxville. Right, they're going to be out for blood. Tennessee fans will be out for blood. There's no way to get around that. I just think that they will. So with that being said, you take a look at whether they're undefeated, right, whether they're a 1-loss team, 2-loss team. I just think that they're going to come out and they're going to play with a chip on their shoulder, right? Georgia stopped that offense. We shut down their offense in Sanford. So when it comes down to that, I definitely think that you have to be mindful. And with that being said, you pose a threat for Georgia on this. So as we move into this, I have Tennessee as the hardest game. Tennessee is the hardest game on our schedule this year. I have them as a 6. I think Georgia handles Tennessee. I do, right? I definitely think that we handle them, and that's fine. However, Tennessee, it's all dependent upon Joe Milton. If Joe Milton is what people in the national media are expecting him to be, there's a chance, right, that the receivers and things like that. I don't have this game any higher, though, because I think Georgia's defensive capabilities, I think Georgia's defense will be able to handle what Tennessee does offensively. You don't have this. You don't have the Jalen Hyatts, right? Even when you look at that, right, you have Brew McCoy coming back. Squirrel White is a name that I think people are aware of or should be aware of on this one. I just think that with how Josh Heupel operates his offense, I think it bodes well for Georgia. I think Georgia understands what to do, but it could get dicey, right? Being on listen, I guarantee that it should be the loudest home game or away game, that Carson Beck or whichever quarterback is starting will experience this year. So it'll be a legitimate hostile environment. So I have it as a 6. Now, Moving on from the Tennessee game, I think so far you're still undefeated. I think you could see something similar to last year against Tennessee, but at the same time, it could be worse or it could be closer. We don't know, but I think your schedule, you're still unblemished at this point. Now, we look to the end of the season where we go to Atlanta, take on Georgia Tech, and while we dominated Georgia Tech last season, while we dominated them last season, I do think it's interesting to see what Brent Key will do. We'll be at the end of the season, so we'll have a full season's worth of what to expect from them and see how he's doing as a coach. And with that being said, I think you look at them as being a 3. And the reason why I say that is I think the talent is better than what it was last year. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but you lose Sims, and I think that could be the X factor there. Your main loss. But I think Key is going to be on the right track there. They could be going through a rough season. We don't know. I just can't put them any higher than the 3. If any indication from that last season, I saw, that first drive last season. Not saying they can do that, sustain it, but it was something worth noting, right? That they can prepare for a game. So we'll see how that plays out. But ultimately, I have them at a 3. And with that being said, you go 12-0 in the regular season. And I think that matters because when you take a look at the situation, right, that Georgia's in, we look at the schedule. This is why this is important. And before I explain that, I'll kind of go back and recap this. So your 1s, you have Ball State and UT Martin. Your 2s are Missouri, Florida, Vanderbilt, and UAB. Your 3s are Georgia Tech, Kentucky, and Auburn. Your 4, South Carolina, Ole Miss at 5, and your toughest game, in my opinion here, Tennessee at a 6. So there is your difficulty scale for each game this season. Now, I think the interesting thing for this is it is important to note that while you're hearing the schedule being soft, right, I think it bodes well for Georgia moving forward. You have the opportunity, if you take care of business, to go ahead and get a lot of your freshmen and your reserve guys a ton of experience in game, going to get somebody different. We know how Georgia practices. We're not worried about that. I think Georgia practices against the best team in the country, right, when they go against themselves. We've seen that kind of happening over the last couple of years, right? We've definitely been more prevalent there. But it's just different when you're in practice and then going up in a different game. So having the opportunity to get reps, in games, right, at a different speed against someone else where you can legitimately, go. You don't have to worry about the spring game where you can't touch the quarterback. If you want to get a sack in this game, you can absolutely just destroy the quarterback. Right? You have that opportunity. So you get guys a chance to go. Offensively, I think it's going to be interesting because you should, in theory, operate your offense to a point where it allows the backup or the third string quarterback even to come in and operate the offense. We saw this last season, Carson Beck, when he would come in, we saw him operate the offense. With that being said, this year, I hope to see some of the same. I think you need to do that moving forward because 2024 schedule is nowhere near as soft as what we're seeing in 2023. Is there a chance that some of these games become more difficult? Yes, there's always that chance, right? We're 52 days out from the start of Georgia football. So obviously there is some time things happen. Injuries can happen, right? You have to account for these things, but it's hard to account for it right now. So we're just taking off what we know as it stands today. So with that being said, I think Georgia goes 12-0 undefeated regular season, looking for a spot in the SEC championship game to be determined on who we go with and play in Atlanta. With a spot at the playoffs, I think Georgia solidifies their shot in the playoffs there. I think you still have to win in the SEC championship just because how people could view our schedule. However, back-to-back champions, I think if you slip up and lose a game close in the SEC championship game, you should get the benefit of a doubt. We saw Alabama do that before. Now, with that being said, that is all we have for today. Make sure to like, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, Rumble, wherever you find the videos, and wherever you find your podcast, make sure to like and leave a review. Honest criticism, I'm okay with taking that. If you like what you're hearing, let us know. If you don't, let us know. That's the only way we get better and give you what you want. With that being said, have a great day. We will catch you next time. Go Dogs.